going. So welcome students. This is our national support session for assignment 2 of your module FOED 7112. Before we start with the actual assignment discussion, I want to just cover some basic technical aspects that I find students often forget to include in their work. So if we just look at referencing for a little bit, I know we've covered this, but I'm just refreshing your mind on this. Please take note that et al. Has to be in italics. As you can see on the right-hand side there in red, et al. Is the abbreviation for the Latin term et alia, which means and others. And that is why it has to be in italics, because I'm making use of a different language. Also take note that when you put the name in the bracket with the date, it's going to be et al. Full stop, comma, space 2014. So please make sure that you get this right. This comes from the IIE reference book, so we really have to stick to this. Chris is asking, is it okay to not use et al. And to use all of them? Yes, you can do that, although generally that is actually frowned upon. It's not wrong, but it's not academically safe practice, if that's the right way to put it. Then quite a few students are making use of YouTube videos. Okay, so limit your videos to maybe 2 references in an essay about that. The reason why YouTube videos are not a good source to reference are I can make a video that's based on my opinion and place it on YouTube. That does not mean that my opinion has got any say whatsoever. So if you needed to use a YouTube video, I would make use of something where a professor from some university has a full-on discussion on idealism or realism or something like that. I would not actually reference a YouTube video at all. Some students only made use of YouTube videos, and that really does not reflect well on you as a student, because it shows that you have not actually done your research out of that. So when it comes to blogs, that's the next basic problem that we have. So for School of Education, we don't really use blog. A blog is someone's digital diary. Again, it is your opinion on something. It's very subjective. It does not carry weight at all. So please don't make use of blogs. When it comes to the abbreviation for the Department of Basic Education, such as in a CAPS document, we do accept DBE, not DOE. Can someone please just type to Yolanda what to do if she can't hear? So in the front of each one of your assessments, there's that thing with all the little blocks before you actually get to the instruction. And here are the key points stated in those little blocks. So when do I, as the marker, deduct 5% and when do I deduct 10%? So if you make 1 to 2 common errors, let's say et al., you don't put in italics, but you repeat the same 100 times, it's still the same mistake, so it will count as 1 error. That means I have to have a deduction of 5%. When you have lots of errors, it moves on to 10%. So let's just have a look at some of the other things, because a lot of people are querying this with me. The second line that states, if missing reference for a small section of task, with other words, you've got 1 or maybe 2 paragraphs that had no references and that's not your own work, then it's 5%. When you've got large sections of work without any reference, you then need to lose 10%. And then Take note, another one that a lot of lecturers in the face-to-face space tend to not be aware of. It says references are only given at the beginning or the ending of each paragraph, because that's also not academic sound practice. That will require a 5% deduction, whereas a 10% would be if you have the incorrect author, there's no year. Big one, take note, quotation marks are missing, or the next bullet, page numbers are provided for paraphrased work. You cannot have a page number in a paraphrased work. So please take note of this so that you can be aware of these things for your next assignment. Then when it comes to the layout of an essay, so question 1B and question 2 of this assignment will require an essay. So I've used bullets to tell you what the basic layout of an essay should be. Your font size should be 11 or 12. Your font type should be Calibri, Times New Roman, or Arial. I personally also accept Tahoma and a few of the others that's easy to read. Please make sure you must have a line spacing of 1.5. Your margins should be normal or moderate, and you've got the same layout straight through your document. So your reference list should also be 1.5 line spacings. Another thing that that's popped up, please take note you don't have a reference list at the end of each question. I've queried this with National and they have confirmed you have one reference list right at the end of your assignment. So let's get into what it is that you need to do for assignment 2. So they give us a statement that tells us this covers up until theme 3. You need to choose question 1A or 1B. If you do both, your lecturer and the marker, in my case, me, will only mark 1 out of the 2. This is not primary. Decide, okay, Chris would do better if I mark 1B. So that would be a problem. Yes, Brandon, bibliography is fine. In a next session, if my faithful admin person can remind me to explain to you what's the difference between a bibliography and a reference list, but you may use the word bibliography. So let's then move on to question 1.1a. So it starts off with a quote. I'm not going to read this quote to you guys. You can see what's going on. Imagine that you are a qualified teacher who applies the principles of pragmatism in your classroom, particularly the concept of learning by doing. You are called on to compile an instructional guide that other teachers who want to follow suit could use. You may use any format for the guide. Deborah is saying, what if I start the paragraph with my own opinion and the next 2 sentences are sourced? That means my reference. Yes, exactly. No, Deborah, that's very good practice. You should, in my opinion, you should vary where you put it. Sometimes I will have a statement, especially if not wanting to go into detail with question 1, but where you had to compare your metaphor, well, you had to analyze your metaphor based on idealism and realism. So if you started making a statement that is your own statement and you then justify it with quotations, or not with quotations, with citings, with other words, you paraphrase, that could be a way to do. Okay, I'm continuing with this question. So you need to create an instructional guide. It can use any format. Compile the instructional guide in which you have to do these following. You've got to give a short but clear explanation of the basic premises of pragmatism. Highlight the relevance of pragmatism in today's classrooms, not in education, in the actual classroom. Provide practical guidance for other teachers in terms of applying learning by doing. With other words, tell them how do they apply this concept of learning by doing. Provide examples of methods associated with pragmatism that you employ in your classroom. Pragmatist methods include, but are not limited to, hands-on problem solving, experimenting, group work, and projects. The length of your essay should, although we don't tell you pages or things like that, it should be about 1,000 to 1,500 words. I just want to show you guys, because I see Shruk has asked a question, why is he being kicked off? Just so that you guys understand, if you go onto attendees, currently we've got 89. If you click on that, you will see each person's name, and then there's a thing that looks like a bunch of files. And some of us, like Alushka at the moment, hers is sitting at about 3/4. That is a very good indication of what your connection is like. Like Gina Dos Santos is sitting at half, which means her connection is not very strong at the moment. So that tells you very clearly how the system picks you up. It's beyond us. This is IT stuff, just so that you guys understand that that's what's cooking here. Okay, so in question 1.A then, or 1A, you've got to create a guidelines. It's totally up to you how you want to go about doing this project. So let's continue to the rubric. I'm not going to go through the rubric with you in detail. You can see those for yourself. But as it is relevant to your previous assessment, just to explain to you how to read a rubric for the sake of enrichment, if there's the right word for it. So the rubric that's currently on the screen has got 4 categories: does not meet, partially meet, meets, exceeds. So if you did this question and I gave you a 6 out of 10 for the first section, it will then mean that you've demonstrated a clear understanding of the key premises of pragmatism. With other words, you've done your job. You've told me what it is. Take note of the next one. The exceeds means not only have you demonstrated it, but you've also given a deep understanding of the premises. And if you wanted to go from a meets the needs to an exceeds the needs, you would have been able then to see what's the difference. So if you want to go look back at your work and you see where it is that you got scored or where your score was placed, check what is in the next category and aim for that to be your next thing. So when I work on an assignment for myself, or when I set an assignment, I look at the exceeds column. That is ultimately where we all want to fall, and I use that as a guideline to tell me what it is that this specific assessment is requiring of me. So there's just the last section. Please take note, structure and style is again. The format of the answer is appropriate, coherent, and so forth. I'm going to share some examples with you guys just now. So just then to explain, we can get through a guideline of what's expected here. You're going to start off with an explanation of what pragmatism is. With other words, you've got to give me a definition and a description. Next, you're going to explain the relevance of pragmatism in the classroom. Why is it important for us? Number 3, you're now going to give practical guidance for other teachers on how they can incorporate this in their classroom. Number 4, you're going to give advice and explain how teaching will happen. Give examples from how you use pragmatism in your own teaching. Yes, I do understand some of you are not currently in a classroom, so you would struggle with this. Then seriously consider using 1B as your option and not this one. You need to make use of CAPS and explain a problem that you give your learners to solve. Why do you need to put that in? Because this is a guide that you're creating for other teachers on how to be pragmatic in the classroom. And the best way to do that is to give them an example. Once they've got that, then I'll say, okay, so how can I apply that example to my subject? And that's where it goes. So use appropriate structure and style. So here comes a couple of examples. These are two ways in which you can have a guide. It could be an infographic. It could be a simpler form of an infographic, as you would see on the right-hand side. Here is a picture of another student's work that started off with it. So this, obviously, the whole thing from here on would be this green background with writing. Here's another example. This student made use of the layout of a magazine, which works in 3 columns. She's included a picture of Dewey. She's got her headings, as you can see. The next example is a simpler layout, but still covering everything that we need to do without being too fancy or over the top. Simply telling me, what is pragmatism? What does it look like? It tells me everything that I need to do like that. For those of you that are not that creative with little blocks and things like that, you could also just have your guide in the form of an essay. But take note, you need to have headings because this is a guide for other teachers to follow. That brings us to the end of question 1A. Next, you can do 1B. Roseanne says, will we get marked down for something? Just quickly say, will we get marked down for using? Definitely not. You're not going to get marked down for using straightforward layout. Edna, go ahead. Edna, you've got your hand up.
I wanted to say, before you move to B, with pragmatism, it mostly defines that it's about practical work or experiment. Does it refer to, for example, if you is it similar to role playing if you are teaching a life orientation or what? Because that's the part I'm getting confused on how to structure the activity on number 4 or point number 4.
Pragmatism is pragmatic in the sense of the children have to discover the work for themselves. You guide them and you help them, but they go through things by themselves. So, an example of that would be in a business studies lesson where children have to come up with a business plan of some sort. They've got to think of Entrepreneur Day, where children decide they're going to sell pancakes or biscuits or something, and they've got to come up with their own business plan and so forth. That would be an example of a pragmatic approach. There are others as well. Just do some research more to find out what those could be. Nathan says, can we make a Canva layout and copy and paste in? Yes, you definitely can do that. You are also quite able to, but please don't do these as 2 separate submissions, but you can upload 2 documents for this assignment because some students are going to struggle to get 1A in front of 2. So in the past, but please don't submit and then go on and try to submit another one because then your second submission cancels out your first submission. So rather when you say upload file, click 2 files to upload and then click proceed and then it will upload both. Can we move on to question 1B? Okay, so question 1B deals with the work of Nell Noddings, and she has a theory on the care theory, and that is what we are going to address in this story. So you basically have to open that specific document. We have shared it on our WhatsApp groups. If you're not in my specific group, this is the correct link for you to follow. The important thing is they're going to give us a scenario and then follows the instructions. So Lizandre has got her mic on. Let me just quickly see if I can mute. Okay, that's done. Okay, I see I've got another question. Please, can we not discuss assignment 1 right now? We're busy with a national session for assignment 2. We can deal with those queries later. So the scenario that they give you that you have to relate to the work of Nell Noddings is as follows. It is a busy Friday afternoon at Pandora High School where you are a teacher. It's been a tough week with many demands on your attention, tests to mark, new work to start with the learners, and a number of administrative tasks for the school management team. You're looking forward to the weekend so you can relax a little. One of your learners, Nonsebo, comes to tell you that a situation has developed between two classmates that involve the infraction of school rules. Nonsebo tells you that one of your learners, Kondi, has been bullying another learner, Eugenia, by hiding her books and notes. As this matter has been reported to you as the teacher in charge, you have to respond. So let's just recap on what's going on in this little scenario. First of all, it's a Friday afternoon. We don't know what is in Eugenia's books. She might have a test or something that's due on Monday, and that's why it is a major problem if we don't deal with this now. So you as a teacher kind of have to deal with it because you are also the teacher in charge in this specific situation. Okay, so now we've got the scenario going. What is it that you need to do? Based on the elements of relational caring that Nodi addresses in the article, and here are the 3. Listening is number 1, thinking and creating a climate, thinking is number 2, creating a climate for caring is number 3. You now have to use those 3 and write an essay in which you apply these 3 elements within the context of the scenario. With other words, you've got to relate those 3 elements: listening, thinking, creating a climate of caring based on the scenario. Explain how you will use each of the elements in approaching and addressing the dilemma set out in the scenario. Your explanation must include an overview of each of the elements and its role in applying relational caring. Use examples from the scenario. Take note, not other examples from other stories. They have to relate to the scenario given. Please note you are required to reference the sources you consult. Your essay should be at least 1,000, but not over 1,000 words in length. Please use the assessment grid for that question. Those are the grids. So just to give you a little bit more help, let's go through some basics of what exactly is care ethics and relational caring. Thanks for informing me, Courtney. Everybody, I know load shedding is a major problem. So, and our session goes over 8 o'clock. So some people will get cut off, but on the other side, some people will only be able to join after 8. So what are the assumptions of care ethics? Relationships are essentially ontological. Every human life begins with relationships. Without a mom or a dad, you cannot exist. Your parents created you due to their relationship. Caring relationship is ethically, morally basic, or foundational, however you want to look at it. We get the carer and the cared for. Adults, in adults, this becomes mutual. So I look after, my children are adults now. My baby is 29. So I look after him in certain aspects. He again will then look after me. So as adults, that is fair. But when we have got a small child, that relationship is not equal. A child cannot reciprocate for the parent unless the child is older. So that is basically what's going on here. So Shrook say he also has load shedding now. Mecha says basically we're discussing how we would solve the conflict using the three elements. Not so much how you're going to solve that, it's just how do these three elements relate to the scenario. If it makes it easier for you to understand how to solve it, then by all means look at it like that. It could be what's reflected at home. All that we know is the scenario that's been given, and we have to elaborate on that. So if we start off then on number one there, the carer is attentive. The carer, in this case, you, the teacher, you have got to listen. We've got to be receptive. We've got to try to understand what the child is experiencing. For a teacher, this can be conflictual. The needs of the learner are often different from the prescriptions of a certain institution, and that makes it really difficult to do. Number two, motivational displacement. That is, the teacher's motive or her energy will begin to flow towards the need of the learner once we've picked up. So in the scenario, the teacher is tired. She just wants to go home and chill, but she's got to be caring towards the children that's now being, or little Eugenia that's being bullied. Number three, the carer must respond positively to the student's expressed need. The person that came and told her about the bullying also has a need to say, hey, teacher, here I am, please help. This is what's going on. What is the role of the cared for? So in other words, the children. Dependent on the teacher's feedback. How are we going to go about that? There's a difference between virtual carers and relational carers, hard workers versus establishing caring relations. These are just some of the key aspects that I'm touching on here that you need to go and study in the document that the link was provided for. So this deals with sympathy and empathy as well. The suggested layout for this question would be that you would start with an introduction. You'll get some more info just now. Then you will go on and have your full-on discussion of those 4 points. And lastly, you will end up with a conclusion. Further breakdown is in your introduction, you should address the following 3 things. What is relational caring? What is caring ethics? And why should a teacher care? And so forth. You can see the rest for yourself. That is what you should cover in your introduction. When it comes to the actual discussion, you can look at the bullets that's over there. I'm not going to read these with you in detail. You guys are welcome to download the slides. For those that might have forgotten, on the top of the screen, if you are on a desktop or a laptop, you will see there's a little pencil, then there's a square with a T in it, then there is a diagonal line, and next to it there's a square with an arrow that points down. That's your download. So if you click on that, it will download these slides onto your device and you can read these through at leisure. Your conclusion for this essay would then be where you summarize the main elements of the essay. You end empathically with an evaluative statement about the issue of ethics of care, Nodding's model, and your own position. So that's what question 1B is about. Yes, Nina, please go ahead.
Hi, evening. Just something I was curious about. Well, my phone's ringing. With regards to the introduction and the conclusion, in many journal articles that I've read, the introduction and the conclusion are not necessarily just, one small paragraph. So is there a limit? Because I know certain essays or assignments ask us to, keep it short and sweet. But would we be penalized for writing a longer introduction and a longer conclusion?
No, you won't be penalized for it. Your introduction, your conclusion also does not have to be one paragraph.
Mm,
But be careful, this whole thing has to have a word count of 1,000 to 1,500.
yes.
So be
Okay.
careful not to overstep
Mm,
your word count.
okay. Oh,
Okay,
perfect. Thanks.
so that means that your essay 1B should be 2 to 3 pages. I would say it's probably okay if you go to 3.5. If you go to 4 and more, you have written not concisely enough. So you definitely can make use of a more detail in your introduction and your conclusion, but they should not be excessively long. The main discussion should take place within the actual body of the essay. Okay, we're moving on to question 2. They start off with a quote that says, critical educational theorist Paulo Freire has argued for a move away from education as transmission or depositing facts to more learner-centered and progressive approaches in which classrooms are democratic environments. One of the implications is that the practice of teaching and learning is established by 2 equal parts. Write a short essay in which you discuss the notion of equality between teachers and learners in the classroom and why learners must be empowered to actively construct their own knowledge. Relate the underlying principles and implications of critical theory to your arguments. Include examples of particular teaching practices that may embrace democracy. So, this is really, really important that you have got examples in your essay. So when I read your essay, so I'm left-handed, so I scroll with the mouse on the left hand. My right hand is actually on the table and I count on my fingers every single example you mention. And that's how I determine whether you've given me good examples or sufficient examples compared to none whatsoever. You are required to reference the sources you consult. Your essay should be approximately 1.5 pages or 800 words in length. Please use the assessment grid for question 2. So Selena says with a 1.5 line spacing, 1,500 words sometimes goes to 4 pages. Please make sure that your margins are set to normal or moderate. If you make use of headings, which takes up space, your essay should end up being 3 pages. 4 pages are the average standard is there's 500 typed words, obviously not all in one paragraph. The basic layout of an essay is like that. So, Selena, I hear what you say based on the example I used earlier. That's why I said 3.5 pages should be accepted. From about 4 onwards. You are now writing too much. Okay, so question 2 requires 1.5 pages or 800 words. This then starts off with, if we look at what is it that they're actually asking you, you can see these bullets. I'm not going to go through them again because there is a further breakdown just now. So first of all, what is critical theory? You need to understand that. It focuses on liberating the oppressed. Education should allow the oppressed to regain their sense of humanity in turn overcoming their condition. However, the oppressed must also take responsibility for their own liberation. So too should the oppressors be educated about the role that they played in the oppression. Those who authentically commit themselves to the people must re-examine themselves consistently. So that's just a brief little layout on critical pedagogy. Paulo Freire has this criticism of what we call the banking model, where we think of children as these empty vessels that we as teachers need to go and fill up. Freire was saying children come with a background where we don't know what's their home circumstances, we don't know what's their prior knowledge, we don't know what interests they have. They are a lot more than just an empty vessel, and we should consider this aspect when we teach children. Freire also has something that's called a democratic principles. So where he is of the belief that education is a dialogue that takes place, dialogical or conversational rather than a curricular form. So instead of me standing in front of the class and saying to the children, okay, keep quiet, listen to what I do, and I tell you everything, then there is going to be a major problem. Insistence that the dialogue involves respect. So it's a case of the respect for the teacher and respect for the students. It should not involve one person acting on another, but rather people working with each other. Too much education, Paulo Freire argues, involves banking. The educator makes deposits into the educatee. Now, whether you agree with this or not is not what the discussion is about. Okay, this is at this stage, just tell me what it actually is. That's what is at stake here. So a breakdown of this essay would be then, in your introduction, you would explain to me what is critical theory. So if I then have to continue with what I think it was Nina just now asked, obviously there's three bullets here. What is critical theory? Who was Paulo Freire? What was his pedagogy, critical pedagogy, all about? Those are kind of three separate things. So students do struggle to stick to the 800 words with this. You don't have to go into a full-on discussion on critical theory and its origin and what. You should be able to tell me in a sentence of probably 20 to 30 words what is critical theory. The same goes for who was Paulo Freire. A very short introduction of who he was and what was his idea of education. What is his theory of critical pedagogy? So this specific one actually requires you to write quite a bit in the introduction. Then take note, now you form a full-on discussion of critical theory. In your introduction, you just touched on it. You gave me a basic definition of it. Now you're going to explain his critical pedagogy. You're going to explain this banking system. What is the democratic education that he refers to? Discuss the notion of equality. Discuss how and why students need to construct their own knowledge. And then discuss practical examples. And that's a big one, people, that bottom one. Discuss practical examples of how this can be implemented in the classroom. And then you will have your conclusion where you end off with a summary of the main ideas. It's evaluative discussion, it should be empathic, and so forth. And that brings us to the end of our NSS session. Does anyone have a question regarding Jennifer is asking a very important question. Chris, I'll let you talk just now. She's asking how many practical examples would be sufficient? The rubric does not tell you exactly an amount, but I would say in this essay, this number 2, or essay 2, I would say you need to have at least 2 to 3 examples. In the situation in question 1A, where you're doing the guide, where you have to also introduce an example, I would say use there as well around about 2 examples, because you're trying to explain to other teachers how to be pragmatic. In question 1B, where you've got the scenario and the caring theory, you're not really going to use examples, because those examples, or your relation, the connection has to be between the caring theory and the given scenario. You could elaborate on it and say, for argument's sake, we don't know if Eugenia is writing a test on Monday and that is why she has to have a book. So you could, but you don't have to give examples. You could elaborate on it. But I think if for question 1A, you've got about 2 examples or more, you could have more but not less. And for question 2, if you've got 2 examples, I think you have covered what you needed to cover. Chris, you wanted to say something.
No, pretty much Jennifer answered it there. I was going to ask the same thing. What examples and how many examples? Is it okay if we come up with something, or do we have to actually go and find examples that other people have used?
No, you come up with your own, because that is where the application of theory comes in. That is what's going to bump your mark from the second highest column to the highest. When I can see you know how to apply this in the classroom or to life, then you would then that would increase your mark. So Hillel say, can you give examples of questions you would ask the students? With regards to to which one? This last one, critical theory.
With regards to, sorry that I just chimed in. So with regards to 1B, so just in terms of when after you've listened and you've thought, maybe just giving some. I just gave some examples of questions I would ask both students, so that I'm just kind of impartial and more trying to get to the bottom of what's actually happening.
Okay, very good person. You're probably a life orientation teacher. Okay, I just want to get
maths.
to the scenario. Are you a maths person? Oh my goodness. Okay, but
I
still,
did read.
Tend to be very logical, so that makes sense. So let's have a look at what's going on here. You're going to have a discussion with Condi, is the boy, or I presume it's a boy, that has hidden Eugenia's books and her notes. Okay, so a good way would be, because one of the elements of noddings is that you've got to listen. So you have to explain to me that you're going to have to go and talk to both these students to find out what actually happened. What's the story? What's all involved? What's the next thing that noddings does?
So it's the listening, the thinking, and then creating a climate.
Yes. So yeah, you're listening. So you would actually talk me through those 3 steps. But in your talking through, you would say, so if I wanted to listen to what actually happened in the scenario, I would go and speak to Condi and Eugenia separately to get their story. Or you could decide you're going to call them into the office or into your classroom and sit them down and find out what's actually going here. So there it is, we've got to listen. What we as teachers tend to do, we tend to be sympathetic towards Eugenia without being sympathetic towards Condi. We need to understand what's caused him to do what he's done. So that kind of like, if that gives you a guidance, that's what I would do. And then in your action plan, go ahead.
No, I'm saying no, that's perfect. I think the one other question, sorry, that I'm dominating the conversation a bit, but the other thing is that I didn't sort of come to a firm conclusion, because I more or less kind of just want to create a safe space for them, wanted to make them feel at ease. So I focus more on the caring aspect as opposed to, at the end saying, okay, you right and you wrong and so forth, because I don't also think that the question requires that. I may be wrong.
I don't think you've got to be very, there's no right way or wrong way
Yeah,
to do it. What am
yeah.
I looking for when I mark this? I'm looking for, are you discussing those three elements? And those should be headings on their own. So you should have listening as one, thinking as one, and creating a climate for caring should be another one. And then
Okay.
underneath those headings, give me a brief definition of what it is. So that is what, if you look at the second bullet, explain what each of these elements are, and then explain it to me. How would you set it up? How does it link up with their scenario?
Okay.
How would you solve or approach the scenario based on those three elements?
Okay. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Okay, it's a pleasure. Someone else wanted to speak. I know Chris wanted to, but someone else as well. I saw their mic come on. Robin, you can go ahead and talk if you want to talk. Okay, so Robin is just
sorry.
yes.
Hi, sorry. Something on my PC is not working with the microphone, so I just quickly logged on my phone, which I will switch off the echo. I just wanted to actually ask, something happened at my daughter's old school involving bullying, but it was the strangest scenario, and can I ask you what you think should have been done? Nothing to do with my daughter, it was a separate case. A girl came crying that she'd been bullied online by another girl and they used to be friends. And there was a big stink because there were nasty things said online and everything. And there was big drama, except one teacher that had nothing to do with this actually said, "Now, this is weird," and asked IT to get involved. And they found out that the girl that was claiming to be bullied had actually created an online profile in her ex-friend's name, and for weeks had insulted herself to set up this girl. Now, if this one person hadn't heard what was going on, this other teacher, none of it would have been uncovered. And this poor girl that wasn't the bully, that was indirectly being bullied, would have been, I don't know, quite traumatized. Well, she is quite traumatized, but that was the extent of bullies, and with the girls 13, 14 years old. Hello?
I think Joe may have logged off there. She might have dropped off load shedding, maybe.
Don't worry, Robin. I can still hear you. And you too, Chris.
I thought I
You're
was
not
going
alone.
back.
Don't worry.
It was just the strangest thing how sophisticated bullies are becoming.
Yeah, this is crazy.
Okay, I'm talking nonstop and I can't understand what's going on. Okay, so Robin, what I would have said, this is a classic example of where caring theory actually stepped in. So if we had actually had a conversation with the girl that was supposedly doing the bullying, and that person adamantly denied, but listen, I did not do that, I would have then said, okay, well, what's going on here? And then take it further. And I'm by far not a counseling type of teacher at all. I'm a language teacher. But that is an example of how you would go about it. Is sometimes you hear something and you pick it up and you're like, okay, what's going on here? And then we could address it based on that. So that is why it's so important to listen to both parties to discover what exactly happened here. So I think the example I used in my, Edna, I'll let you talk just now. So the example I used in my face-to-face class the one day was, let's say we have got John and Peter, okay? And John has just beaten Peter up, Okay, so I'm ready to expel John or to suspend him or whatever because I'm seriously upset with this person. And Peter is just like, he's so upset and he's so hurt, whatever. But when I actually bothered to go and talk to both of them, I now hear that Peter actually made a really ugly comment about John's mother, who is maybe terminally ill, and John totally snapped and in retaliation ended up punching Peter. Now suddenly the situation is a little bit differently because now I'm like, okay, yes, you shouldn't have punched someone, but had I not bothered to speak to John, I would not have understood what actually happened beforehand. And that is why the concept of listening is so important. And once you've listened, then you've got to think about, what did these two people say? And someone asked me just now an example. You can come up with a story that this boy is not telling you, that Condi says to you, but this is actually what Eugenia did, and this is why I hid it. I don't know what you're going to come up with. The whole thing is, your action that you're going to take needs to be in line with what you are describing in your listening and thinking stage. I just want to quickly answer. Mfulentle Precious have asked, should examples also be aligned with caps, just like in question 1A? For question 2, it doesn't have to be caps related. If it's easier for you to do it with caps, then by all means do it. So for those of you that are currently in the classroom, you probably can come up with stacks of examples. By all means, it doesn't have to be caps related. For those of you that might not be in a position where you're currently in a class and you could see what's going on, feel free to look at the CAPS document and look for examples there. Okay, so Robin explained, yeah, it's the things that, and you guys are preparing to teach high school kids, and this is unfortunately where a lot of this type of thing happens. This is where it's, if you're in a boys' school, it's actually quite nice because they're not so full of drama, but the girls can get very, very complicated. So Joel says, sometimes it really does take two to tango, and also sometimes students lie. Maybe Eugenia, there we go. Maybe Eugenia lost her books and just assumes that the dude hid it. Exactly. And that is why you've got to go and listen to it and figure out how to go about it. Nathan says, can I add the Canva to the project, the MS Word file, and also submit the same Canva pictures as separate Canva file or pictures? So the same info will be double in a way. Oh, okay, Nathan broke his. I don't know why you want to do double work, Nathan. If you're going to upload it, don't copy paste. Either have two separate documents or one together. Quite frankly, whatever works best for you, just please make double sure that you put them under the same link so that you don't end up submitting question 1 and say submit, and then you go again submit 2, because whatever you submit last replaces all your previous submissions. So don't go first number 1, whichever one you want to do, and then number 2. They must be, you can upload 2 separate files under the link, but please just make sure that you click it once, if that makes sense. Wesley says he's in a boys' school. It's still drama. Yes, true it is, but it's a heck of a lot less than the girls. Muhammad agrees with me that all boys and all girls schools are very different. That is why I'm actually quite pro a co-ed school where we've got boys and girls. I think it kind of brings more of a balance on what's going on. Jennifer says, thanks for the tip. I'll try and go an all-boys school then. With the all-boys school, there's other issues that can come up as well. Robin, I hear what you say. I taught at the IEB school and I absolutely loved it. I would never teach at a state school again. I would never say never, but I would much rather go to a private school. It just depends on the situation. And remember, a lot of private schools are unfortunately run as a business instead of being run as a school. And that's where things go wrong. That's where Robin says it depends on who's sponsoring it. That's where all of those things pop up. Monin says identity and sensuality seems to be a big thing in boys' schools. I don't know. Maybe someone like Muhammad or Wesley that works with boys could maybe give us their input. I'm not sure. But everyone, I think we've covered the basics of assignment 2. I am going to end the recording so that we can upload this